fairly warm at 50 degrees when we left at 1 a.m., but it is now 3:56, approaching 4 a.m., and it is 33 degrees in Lake City, Florida. Wow, in Lake City, Florida. And this is too cold. And we have driven 184 miles. We're getting 250 watt-hour per mile so far. We are in White Springs, Florida, and it is officially 31 degrees. This is entirely too cold for the state of Florida. We haven't even gotten into Georgia yet. We're still in White Springs, but now it is reading 29 degrees, which is just craziness. We are probably 20-30 miles from the Georgia border. Not exactly sure. I'll put the number up on screen. Also, the fog looks way worse in the video than it is in real life. Just as I predicted, we have 32% battery remaining to go 101 miles. Guys, we are officially in Georgia. It has warmed back up, if you can call it that, to 30 degrees. We've got 83 miles to go with a 1% estimated arrival, and we are at 26% battery. We should be getting there at 5:55 a.m. See you there. Alright guys, we are in Valdosta, Georgia. We have just reached 20% battery remaining. We have another 67 miles to go with a 1% estimated arrival. I really think that it's going to be at 0% when we get there, but I guess we'll see just how efficient this car is. We've been averaging 256 watt-hour per mile so far, getting just terrible efficiency as we continue to go up the highway. I've been cruising at 74 miles an hour, dropped it down 1 mile an hour after a car accident a couple miles back. So we're just continuing on at this speed. I might bump it back up again once we get 50 miles away and have a slightly more accurate picture of what's going on, but we'll see. Alright guys, it is decision time. We are 51 miles away from the Ashburn Supercharger with 15% battery remaining. However, we have a 4 mile an hour headwind and it is freezing outside. So right now, our live projection is switching between 0.1% and negative 0.1% arrival. We are down to the speed limit of 70 miles per hour. So the question is, do we push the 50 miles to Ashburn and charge at the 17 stall 250 kilowatt V3, but intentionally eat into the buffer to get there, because Teslas do have a buffer below zero. However, it's only a few kilowatt hours, 2, maybe 3 at best, and it is very cold, so the battery capacity may be a little bit less than normal. So do we risk it and eat into the buffer, or do we go to the 150 kilowatt version 2 station in Tifton, Georgia, which is 32 miles away? I am leaning toward the drive fast, charge fast strategy of charging in Tifton, because it is now teetering between negative 0.1 and negative 0.2% arrival to Ashburn. Alright, let's stop at Tifton. I think if we maintain 70, I think we could make it to Ashburn, but we're definitely not going to get full speed because the battery is quite cold and will not have enough energy to precondition. So let's go ahead and target Tifton, which is now 28 miles away. It says 4% estimated arrival, but we will probably drop that down. We're going to speed up to about 76 miles an hour, We'll go ahead and we'll turn on the cabin heat again. We're at the defrost. And while we're at it, I turned these lights off because I was driving through some pretty dark portions of Florida, and I wanted some better night vision. We'll go ahead and reactivate the lights, and I will see you in 25 minutes in Tifton, Georgia, at the V2 Supercharger. This is a very minor problem, but given how quiet the whole cabin is, there is a spring in this little mechanism here that allows you to raise or lower the seatbelt point, and it rattles sometimes on the highway. Which, again, is not a huge deal, but because of how quiet the whole car is, you just hear this rattle in your ear. It drives me insane. But great car otherwise. We have 10 miles to go until we reach the Tifton, Georgia Supercharger, and it has just started preconditioning. So by the time we get there with 3% battery, we should be good to go to get 150 kilowatts of power. We are taking exit 62 for the Tifton, Georgia Supercharger. According to the navigation here, it says there are 7 of 10 stalls available, which is a little surprising because it's 5:30 in the morning and 20 minutes ago all 10 stalls were available. But at least there are 7 open spaces, so that's awesome. Ideally, if you are driving to a version 2 Supercharger, you want half of the site to be open, if not more, because the way that version 2 Superchargers work is 2 stalls are paired and share the 150 kilowatts. So for example, there might be a 1A and a 1B and a 2A and a 2B, and the stalls are marked in the bottom middle. 1A and 1B will actually share that 150 kilowatts. So if you have 2 vehicles sitting next to each other, what you will find is 75 kilowatts to each vehicle. So we are going to roll up here. And it looks like there are actually 2 stalls. Oh, it just updated to 8, so one of the vehicles must have just pulled away. We got a white Model S on some kind of aftermarket wheel and a Cybertruck. Cool. Alright, let's go ahead and get plugged in real quick, and we'll see where we're going next. Probably Ashburn. Apparently I parked too far away. Alright, we are starting to charge. It's just ramping up here. We're up to 14 kilowatts, and while it ramps, let's see what our options are. Alright, I have reset our road trip stats since I forgot to reset that at the beginning of the trip, and we will just average it out with our since charge stats here. We went 286 miles, used 75 kilowatt hours of energy, with a drive average of 263 watt-hour per mile. We are getting 112 kilowatts right now, which is not quite the 150 I was hoping for, but I don't know, there's something going on with these chargers. Last time I was here, I had the same Same issue with my Model Y, where some chargers worked at 150, some of them wouldn't go past 100 kilowatts, and some of them just hang out at 112 to 120. So it kind of is what it is. We'll clean that off a bit. But yeah, we'll just charge up here until we have just enough energy to make it down to Ashburn. We're at 5% charge right now. I think we will unplug at 8 or 10%. I'll have to think about that. I think I want to do 8%. You know what, let's split the difference. Once it hits 9%, we'll go ahead and unplug, and we will burn the juice down to Ashburn, where we can get a full 250 kilowatts. Alright, the car is convinced that at 8% we are going to get there with 0% battery, which I think is a bit pessimistic, but it's been a bit optimistic this first leg of the trip. So we're going to go ahead and charge up to 10%, and then we will blast the 21 miles down to Ashburn. Alright, I am pretty sure that there is something going on with this supercharger. I thought maybe it was a voltage problem where I just showed up with the battery so low that it was simply an issue of voltage and amperage, but it peaked at 118 and then it dropped back down to 112, and we're actually at 10%, so let me unplug and then I will keep talking. Alright, it's now showing 11% indicated. Although that will probably quickly drop down to 10% as we hop on the highway here. But anyway, I thought that maybe after I had recorded the last clip that it was just an issue of the voltage of the battery being too low to really take advantage of the 150 kilowatt potential speed of the version 2 supercharger. But I really don't think that's the case, because it started around 108, 110 kilowatts, got up to 112, then it climbed to 118 and dropped back down to 112, which seems like very strange behavior. And there were no cars parked on either side of me. And sometimes the version 2 superchargers, they'll actually space them out a bit, so one stall is not sharing directly with the stall next to it, but there was only one other vehicle there. The Cybertruck in the clip of us arriving actually left about 30 seconds after I plugged in. But yeah, just very, very strange behavior from that version 2 supercharger. And we'll see what happens at this V3. I expect a much more reliable session. The version 2s they're great chargers for what they are. It's a nice place to stop. There's a hotel on one side, which I'm not a huge fan of hotel supercharging, but there is a Starbucks there, which is a good place to grab some breakfast, hang out for lunch for a bit. It makes sense to have the V2 there. It offers some good coverage that the version 3 superchargers just don't have quite yet in terms of density. But I am glad to be out of there and on to Ashburn. Like I said, I was briefly considering just staying there and charging at 150 kilowatts and then moving on to the next station, but at 110 kilowatts, I mean, we're doing not even half the charging speed that this car is capable of. And while this is a very efficient vehicle and it can make the most out of lower power charging, there's just no need for it. There are so many other superchargers around that just making a quick splash and dash is really what's going to get us on our way and back to Ohio the quickest. So, at this point, we are 17 minutes away from Ashburn, Georgia, the supercharger, with an estimated 3% arrival. We're hanging out at 9% now, and I will see you there shortly. A quick note, the vast majority of my driving down to Florida and on the return trip is using FSD. FSD is really, really good for what it is. However, there's a lot of buzz about the technology and a lot of FOMO and whatnot, and I gotta say, while it is really good for around town and road trips and just generally an impressive piece of software, it is not necessary to the experience of a Tesla. My previous vehicle did not have FSD, and I've also spent quite a bit of time not using FSD in this car, and especially on long highway drives where all you're doing is going straight, occasionally changing lanes, it's really not that big of a difference compared to the lane centering and adaptive cruise. Yes, it's more intelligent. Yes, it will lane change for you instead of you needing to initiate the lane change and then reactivate autopilot. However, it's not worth the $8,000 premium if all you're going to use it for is highways. Just wanted to put that out there. I am using it. It is great. I wouldn't necessarily say it's necessary. I wouldn't necessarily say I'd even recommend it, unless you're just if you're a tech enthusiast, or if this kind of technology really interests you, it could be worth it. But otherwise, $8,000 is still pretty steep for what, at the end of the day, is still a beta product that, while it works well most of the time, does have occasional critical problems. It is not a fully hands-off, don't pay attention kind of system. It is a hands-free driver assistance. However, you still need to be paying attention at all times. You still need to watch what it's doing. You are still in control. It is still your vehicle. So just keep that in mind if you are considering a Tesla and potentially FSD. I'm fairly certain that's a Tesla, but whatever it is, it seems to have its European rear fog lights enabled, which is quite interesting. You don't see that very often here in America. I know there's some level of software locking on Teslas. No, that's not a Tesla. That is an Audi. If it's European fog lights enabled, it looks like an A5 is what it said. Not totally sure. Either way, that was interesting. To me, at least. Alright guys, we are taking the exit now for Ashburn, Georgia. Just make sure there's nobody coming. Alright. We are at 2% battery. And just gotta swing in behind this Circle K. Alright. We got one Model S and the pick of the litter for charging stalls. We'll go ahead and plug in right here on what I believe is 4B. Alright, this is the second time on this road trip I've seen this odd behavior from a V3 Supercharger, where it just won't communicate. Guess we'll move stalls. Alright. It's doing it again. Man, this is really strange. Well, let's go ahead and move farther down. Maybe to the right of that red Model S there. Let's see if we can get a working station. Third time's the charm, I hope. Are you kidding me? Alright, let's try 3A. And if that's not it, then I might be in trouble. Alright, let's move to 3A. Man, I don't think I've ever had so many issues at a version 3 Supercharger. Alright. success. Okay. Not gonna lie, I was legitimately a little bit worried there. So for some reason, I couldn't get any of the 2s or any of the 4s to activate. But it looks like we are, in fact, charging now. We're already up to 166 kilowatts at 2%. 170. Perfect. Alrighty, well, I'm going to go ahead and let this charge while I make a run in to use the restroom, because it is 6:05 and I have not used the restroom since 1 a.m. when I left. Editor Antonio here. I could not find, for the life of me, the post that I found, but a few days after this road trip, I did some searching on the internet, and I was able to find one other individual with a refreshed Tesla Model 3 who was having a similar problem, but they were experiencing this same behavior that you saw in the video on a level 2 charging station. Now, I've never had that problem on a level 2 station, but I'm keeping a very close eye on this car now whenever I charge it, just because I obviously don't want it to happen again. And it just seems very strange for it to work on one bank of chargers, not another. And my only real guess is maybe it just wasn't starting the authentication process properly, because the first 3 banks of chargers that I tried, I was the only one on each bank of 4 chargers. And the final one that did work, I parked right next to a Tesla Model S, which was already charging. So I'm not sure if that's an accurate statement, if that's what occurred, or what exactly was going on there. But my best guess is, for some reason, the car was just not initiating the communication with the DC fast charger. Anyway, I have a service appointment in soon for a couple of minor things. There seems to be some condensation coming into the headlights, and the steering wheel makes an odd creaking noise that it's not supposed to. But when I'm there at the service center, I'll see if I can talk to one of the technicians, and maybe they've encountered this issue before, and if they have, then I'll post an update in a future video. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Charge on.